If you're watching this thinking it's going to be a comedy video like my normal stuff, it is not. So move ahead. There will be comedy stuff in the future. In a few weeks, I'm going to have some music videos, but this is like an audio tutorial. So if that does not sound interesting to you, get out of here. You can be so bored. If you're into audio tutorials and like mixing tutorials, you're going to be so fascinated. Here's what I saw on one of the Universal Audio office hours. For anybody who's not a music nerd, this is going to be very boring.
4.
What?
There's the little idea of making a selection and doing Shift Option 3 to consolidate, right? That's consolidate selection.
Mm-hmm.
But if you add Control and do Shift Option Control 3, it'll generate a tone,
What?
right? But now it goes further than that, Ben. So if you select 2 tracks and do the same thing, you now have. And if you select 3 tracks and do the same thing, and finally 4 tracks, and you get 4.
What?
Okay. This is the
signal.
The first one, but the rest of this is
dude.
In there, state selection.
Yep.
Like so that's a standard useful command for taking a bunch of clips, consolidating them. So Shift Option 3.
Yep.
But so you just drop in Control.
Gotcha. Yep.
Add and that'll do the tone. And then you add the tones by selecting extra tracks.
Smart. There we go. Now I'm gonna have fun this weekend.
I was gonna say I expect a beat. I expect a beat and a composition using that, Ben.
That'll be a challenge. If you guys, anyone that's watching, you're welcome to join on this challenge as well. Let's see who can make the sickest beat using the test tones.
Yeah.
So I thought that sounded fun, and I did it. Okay, so here's the whole track. That's it. So how did I put that? These are other than the vocals, everything is a sine wave. And so here's how I did that. So the bass, we're just going to look at the bass part. Here we go. So here's the bass. Okay. Originally, it's just this. So I put it on some tape. Didn't change it that much. Then I put on this, which is a Transient Designer. So I increased the attack by a bunch, and then I lowered the sustain so it shortens the sound. And it's got this kind of a clip to it, which you want that attack. But it still didn't sound right. So then I added a plate here to increase reverb time. And I didn't really change anything else other than from the default, other than lowering the time, I think almost all the way to the bottom. Oh, almost to the bottom. And then I added this distressor. Right? So there's the kick. Then this sound. Here's how I got that. Here's what we started with, was just this. Which sounds really terrible. And then I added that. It doesn't do that much to the tape. It just warms it up a little bit. Then I added, this is going to sound a little painful. I added attack, and I decreased the sustain almost as much as I could. Then it sounds like that. Again, added a plate. Then I wanted it to have some movement to it, so I added a delay on here. Then I put on the Neve 1084. I decreased a bunch of high end because it was just kind of ear piercing. And I tried a bunch of stuff. I cut low end, tried a bunch of other things, but the general vibe just sounded better. So then I added a tape at the end to warm it up, just to cut some of the sharp high end. So the percussion altogether is that's it. On the percussion itself, on this summing stack on this bus. So they're feeding into this bus, and that's what you're hearing. There is this, which is an API 2500, and it's on like a smack setting, little smack. So it sounds like this. Right? And then it's going through a Neve just to give it character. And then it's going through Fab Filter just to cut to round it off from the low and high. And that's it. So then we have vocal. And actually, who cares about the vocal? Because this is about the sine waves. Know that I sang into a Sphere L22 microphone. And you can emulate a bunch of other microphones with that. I used the Ocean Way setting for the Sphere microphone. Boo, 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 boo. If I record enable it, it'll tell me that it's bad to do that because I don't have enough space. But there's this V76 Preamplifier which goes into the Ocean Way. Oh, that's really freaking out. And then it's going into the Rev E, which is then going into a tape. And I'm going to disable this. Yeah, don't tell me about it. So that's what's going on with that. Same thing for this vocal. It's going through this. And if I wanted to have changed it to, some other microphone, then I could easily do that. But I like this microphone. And then there's background vocals, which do the same thing. They're recorded the same way. And because I didn't have, this is very unfortunate, I didn't buy all the things for Luna, so I don't have the Neve summing, which I really wish I did, but I don't, and it expired and I can't get it back. So instead, here's what I did. I instead did the Neve Preamp. So I took this Neve Preamp because it essentially does the same thing. The one that's built into Luna is more versatile, but this essentially does the same thing. And it just runs through there. So it's kind of summing in the same way as if it was going through the Neve preamplifier. And there you go. So that's what's happening with the background vocal. It's going through Neve, and then it's also going through this Moog Moog. And it's going through this really interesting. It's called LFO Wartone Push. I just wanted it to have this kind of whirly vibe to it. And then all together with that, it's So that is going through a Moog, the Moog XL filter. Then these are nothing at this point. I can delete this. Then the melody line. I thought that I could use this, and I know I can, but I couldn't figure out how to use it with my keyboard. I'm a keyboard player, but I couldn't figure out how to play the keyboard to make the notes, so I had to do it manually, which was not ideal. So here's what I did. So you could see at the top, I did it in latch mode so that it would just kind of, wherever I left it, it would stay. So you can see the tune where it goes, because I needed to have something. Here's what the melody line sounds like with nothing on. This is just the melody line. That's it. And there's some reverb on it. But it's just a sine wave. And then by putting on the vocoder, and I'm actually going to enable everything else too, but and that is magical. If I take all of these things off, that's just the vocoder itself. And then I put on the Fairchild, I think it's the 660, yeah. Then it just has it warms stuff up, and I wanted it to feel, I didn't want it to be so crisp. Then because I don't have Neve summing, I did this little trick of, putting on the Neve preamp. Then I just cut some low end because the low end was getting really muddy, and I just cut that with the Fab filter. And then I put on this other Moog filter. Then I was essentially I'm playing the notes with this mini little keyboard thing here. And that's the entire phrase. I tried a bunch of other settings, but this sounded really good to me. And then the filter here, the Multimode Moog filter, I just wanted it. It's only adding a little bit of kind of swirly vibes. It's not adding that much. I just wanted it to have a little bit more depth to it. And it tones it down a little bit. It's not as sharp sounding. Which I like. So it gives it a bit more depth. This particular, these particular settings gave it a little less sharp of a sound. Then the bass. This was interesting. So the bass, what I did. So the bass does, these two tracks go into this summing track. Let's take them into the summing bus. And the bass is, again, it's just a sine wave. If I take all these things off, Everything's off. Oh, I could also click disable all. Let's next time do that. Disable all, even though there's one now. This is all this is. This note is all this. That's all the bass is. So then I turn on the vocoder. It goes into that. Then that vocoder is going into this AMPEG bass amplifier. And it's giving it distortion and harmonics. Then this is going into the HD 910. And here's it off. Here's it on. And I just used a preset, which is the Hogarth octave down is the preset that I used. Because I just wanted it to be an octave lower. Which is going into a Neve 1084. Right? And here's it off. I put this on low. I decreased some of the high end here, and then I switched it to this preamp. Sounds good. And yes, I know that it's adding volume, but I need a little bit of volume. Then this is going into Auto-Tune by Antares, and because it was getting by this point, it was getting a little unwieldy, and the notes were getting a little off. So I just put it in C chromatic, put it to instrument, and then it is not doing that much. It's just tuning it a smidge so that it doesn't feel wrong. And then I have this. This is a bass writer. It's just analyzing the bass frequencies and switching the audio. It's essentially writing the fader. So it doesn't get too crazy. Then altogether, oh, another thing about this is I couldn't get lower than that little keyboard within this vocoder. So I needed to have a low A, I believe. And so what I did is I put two vocoders. I just to get it down far enough. You'll see the one note. It's right here where it does that one part. That's that section. So I just doubled it down, and I brought it to I just wanted it to get that one note. Yep. So then it hits a low A. Oh, just so you know what I did is I had it. It was already down. It was already up, and then what I did was I just put it down 2 octaves. So the first one was down 2 octaves, and then this other one was down 2 octaves, which maybe is too much. I don't know. I kind of like that better. Let's go with it. All right, so now it sounds like this. Elfine. There you go, Ben. I did it.